Feathers on dinosaurs? The latest science that will blow your mind, from velociraptors to Giganotosaurus. It seems like dinosaurs would have made great additions to any Monster Squad team. But unlike many of the monsters in our squad, these prehistoric beasts are sadly no longer with us today. So while we may never see them in real life, we can always count on Hollywood to bring them to the big screen. And depending on which movie you watch, these enormous creatures are either scaly or feathered. Now, whether they had feathers or not is up for debate, with some experts arguing that even the biggest, scariest dinosaurs had plumage. A 2022 study suggested that almost all members of the dinosaur family sported feathers, including the fearsome Tyrannosaurus rex. In fact, this study estimated that the T-Rex's downy feathers were similar to those of modern chickens. Talk about a major buzzkill. So if dinosaurs did indeed sport feathers, why don't we see any preserved in the fossil record? It turns out that feathers are made of keratin, the same substance that makes up our nails and hair. And unfortunately for feather fans, keratin doesn't preserve well. Most of the time when scientists unearth a dinosaur fossil, they're left with only bone fragments, teeth, and occasionally skin impressions. One of the few times that a dino's soft tissue was found intact was in 2014, when researchers discovered a mummified dinosaur in China. This so-called feathered dinosaur was officially named Stegosaurus. And thanks to this lucky find, scientists were able to learn more about what feathers looked like on dinosaurs. But even without intact specimens, we still have plenty of evidence that suggests our vision of dinosaurs needs a serious update. For example, imprints left behind by ancient feathers have been found on stones, which means we have some idea of where the dino was growing new feathers and what those feathers might have looked like. These fossils tell us that these animals weren't just covered in feathers at their shoulders and heads, but that feathers sprouted all over their bodies. However, just because feathers have been found fossilized in some cases doesn't mean that they were actually attached to dinosaurs. There is a possibility that feathers from different animals got stuck to dinosaurs after they died. Or maybe dinosaurs gathered together around hot springs and traded feathers like we trade Pokemon cards. Sadly, there's no evidence to support this theory, so it's not very likely. Even though finding actual feathers on dinos has been difficult, scientists have managed to reconstruct what kind of feathers they probably had based on their close relatives, birds. Birds evolved from theropod dinosaurs, which include the velociraptor and the T-Rex. So the feathers of modern birds could be the key to understanding what all dinosaurs looked like. In 2020, researchers compared the skeletons of a dromaeosaur, a type of theropod, to modern birds. They noticed that the muscles used for feather attachment were very similar between these two groups of animals, suggesting that dinosaurs sported feathers like birds do. Even more convincing is that dinosaurs had hollow feathers like birds, which helped make them lighter and better suited for flight. But how exactly do scientists know that dinosaurs had hollow feathers? Well, it all comes down to one very special fossil. In 2018, researchers in Canada unearthed a horned dinosaur named Centrosaurus. And while the specimen wasn't all that special at first glance, it turned out to be a game-changer for feather fanatics. This particular Centrosaurus had been preserved in amber, a fossilized tree resin that can trap insects and even small animals whole. The animal trapped inside this particular piece of amber wasn't a small animal, but rather a beetle. And this beetle happened to be sitting on a feather from the Centrosaurus. Thanks to the perfect preservation offered by the amber, the beetle and the feather were both still intact. And while a beetle on a feather doesn't seem too exciting, scientists realized that this feather contained an air sac. All birds have air sacs connected to their lungs that help with breathing and also reduce the weight of their bodies. These structures are usually pretty fragile and don't preserve very often. So the discovery of a dinosaur feather with an air sac basically confirmed that dinosaurs had feathers. If that wasn't enough proof for you, another study in 2022 showed that theropod dinosaurs had the genes needed to grow feathers. To understand this study, it helps to know that our DNA is made of genes, which are sections of our chromosomes that contain instructions for making proteins. Proteins make up everything in our bodies, from our muscles to our hair. So when scientists want to figure out how an ancient animal looked, they can analyze its genes and compare them to the genes of animals living today. By comparing the genetic code of theropods to that of birds, researchers were able to identify the genes involved in feather development. And sure enough, the dino genes were nearly identical to the bird genes responsible for creating feathers. As if all this feather evidence wasn't enough, in 2023, a study showed that most dinosaurs had feathers, not just theropods. To come to this conclusion, researchers used a technique called synchrotron microtomography to look inside dinosaur eggs. This non-destructive technology shoots X-rays through fossils to give scientists a detailed view of the interior. The scientists behind this study analyzed 6 eggs from different types of dinosaurs. 5 of the eggs contained embryos that looked just like baby versions of the adult dinosaur. But one egg contained something totally unexpected, a dinosaur embryo with fully developed feathers. This individual was about to hatch when it was fossilized, so it's unlikely that feathers were just stuck to its body. Plus, the synchrotron scans showed that the embryo had other bird-like features such as a wishbone and a reversed hallux, a big toe that faces forward. So not only does this fossil provide more evidence that feathers are a critical part of dinosaur anatomy, it also shows that birds evolved much more quickly than we thought. Thanks to all this evidence, it's becoming harder and harder to deny that feathers were an important part of many dinosaurs' anatomy. If you ask me, this is just the start of what will one day be a total paradigm shift in paleontology. More and more evidence is showing that dinosaurs weren't scaly monsters, but rather some of the best-dressed animals of all time. They just need a little love from the fashion industry to make that happen. Unfortunately, the fashion industry isn't known for being all that environmentally conscious. But luckily, there is a way for you to get your dino fix while protecting Mother Earth. We think it's high time that dinosaurs got their moment in the sun, which is why we've partnered with to bring you a one-of-a-kind exhibit that brings these extinct creatures to life like you've never seen them before. This exhibition features Jurassic World animatronic dinosaurs and takes visitors back 200 million years to explore the secrets of their extinction and how their legacy lives on today. The exhibit showcases some of the most popular species like the Brachiosaurus and the Triceratops, but also aims to educate visitors about lesser-known dinosaurs like the Ankylosaurus and the Huayangosaurus. You'll get to experience what life was like during the late Jurassic period and discover how these incredible creatures continue to fascinate us today. You'll get to see dinosaurs like you've never seen them before, learn about cutting-edge discoveries, and explore what the future of paleontology holds. Whether you're a dino fanatic or just curious about these fascinating creatures, this exhibition has something for everyone. To purchase tickets and learn more about the exhibition, visit the website below. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime chance to step back in time and discover the incredible world of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are out, birds are in. Alright, now that we've established that dinosaurs probably had feathers, let's talk about their closest relatives, birds. Because if dinosaurs had feathers, then what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, it turns out that the answer depends on how you define chicken and egg. If you're referring to the domestic chicken, these birds descended from wild jungle fowl that were domesticated somewhere in Southeast Asia around 8,000 years ago. Before that, jungle fowl looked a lot like your typical red jungle fowl, the one that inspired the feathery rooster on the KFC logo. But the domestication of chickens is a relatively recent development in the grand scheme of things. Chickens were just one of many different types of birds that evolved from theropod dinosaurs. So to learn more about the ancestors of chickens, we have to go back much further. Some of the earliest birds date back to the late Cretaceous period, around 70 million years ago. But strangely, the fossil record shows that they didn't resemble anything like your typical chicken. Early birds were tiny, no bigger than robins, and they were excellent at flying thanks to their wings and feathers. But why would birds evolve from giant meat-eaters like the T-Rex, when all the evidence seems to point toward them evolving from small flying animals? While it's true that the earliest birds were tiny, scientists think that they evolved from larger theropod dinosaurs. Over millions of years, these dinosaurs gradually became smaller until they resembled early birds like the Archaeopteryx. Then once birds split off from dinosaurs, they continued to evolve, eventually leading to the chickens of today. But evolution isn't a straightforward process, and sometimes related animals can look quite different. Take bats and humans, for example. We share a common ancestor, but today, we look very different. That's because evolution took different paths for each species. Similarly, early birds and chickens share a common ancestor, but they evolved along separate branches. So, early birds didn't necessarily look like chickens, just as we don't look like bats. The same goes for the earliest chickens. They were likely quite different from the chickens that roam free ranges today. For example, chickens have undergone artificial selection by humans. Humans have selectively bred chickens for certain traits over the years. such as size, color, and behavior. This has led to the domestic chicken we know today, which may not be representative of what early chickens looked like. So did the chicken or the egg come first? If you're talking about the domestic chicken, then the egg came first. Eggs were likely laid by early chickens before they became the chickens we know today. However, if you're talking about the evolution of birds, then the chicken and the egg both came first. Early birds laid eggs that eventually evolved into chickens. So in this case, it depends on how you define your terms. Perhaps the better question is, what came first, the chicken, the bird, or the egg, the dinosaur? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for watching.